Hey, I'm going to try to explain that flow chart that's there in the newsletter. Maybe it's self-explanatory, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell you what it's about. Let's see here. I have put together a 3-slide PowerPoint presentation. Nothing terribly complicated. Here we go. All right, so whenever anybody comes into Karavan, even if they've had other dance classes, I usually suggest they come into a beginner class at least for a little while so that they can see how we do things and what we call things, and then we can determine how that syncs up with anything they may have done before. And then somebody who's danced before can decide what the next best step is. Obviously, if you've never belly danced before, you're going to come into beginner classes. And then people say, how long should I stay in beginner classes? And, you know, in the past, we've offered classes that are like 8-week courses. So that's always what I say is a minimum, just because that will get you exposed to every single little basic thing. Perfect it? Probably not, but be exposed to it, yes. And you'll hear the names of things over and over, which is helpful when you move along, just so you can contextualize stuff. Really, everybody's different. And, you know, if you're interested in moving on, it's just good to talk to me, or if you have another teacher that's teaching beginner classes, talk to them and just say, what do you think about me moving into other things? Honestly, what I like to suggest for people is that they spend a little bit of time going back and forth between beginner classes, drills classes. Like if you've taken 8 to 12, whatever, beginner classes, and you want to see how it feels to do the next level up, pop into a drills class. All the classes right now at the studio are still pretty small. And I know that I know who you guys are. So when I see you walk in the room, I have an idea of how many classes you've had and how you're doing with different steps and all that kind of stuff. And it's part of the fun for me to put together a class as I'm going based on who I have in the room. And so I'll consider you, you know, if you come into a drills class, I'm not going to blow you out of the water if it's your first or second one. And I'll try to give you like a little taste of what it feels like to begin to step it up a little bit. What happens in drills classes that is not what goes on in beginner classes is just more complicated layering. Like in a beginner class, you might do hip sways with your arms, but in a drills class, you might do hip sways with a shoulder shimmy. So now we've got 2 torso activities going on. That's much more difficult than just moving 2 separate body parts, even though that has its own challenges, right? So the layering is more complicated. The speed gets increased with things, and increase, decrease, increase, decrease. So there's an element of working on timing in drills classes. There's generally more footwork. The combinations have a little more footwork in drills classes. The combinations that we build in drills classes, as opposed to those we build in the beginner class, generally are longer. The tempo of them changes. So it's just, you know, overall more challenging in every way. I think a lot of people have some good success with merging their experience between beginner classes and drills classes for a little while before committing to, okay, I'm just going to step it up and I'm going to stay here. And so that's what I usually recommend. Now, there's always the possibility that you just want to hang out someplace. I have people in beginner classes that have been there for, I bet, a decade or more, because they just want a different form of exercise, another way to move their body. And so, you know, the challenge of a beginner class is as much as they want, they're just going for that kind of movement. So that's always an option. I love beginner classes. I think it's a great idea to hang out there and just use that as another form of exercise. Some people do that with drills classes. Just get to that point and say, this is great. It's challenging my brain. It's challenging my body. I'm going to pop into drills classes here and there for the rest of my life. That's great too. But sometimes coming out of beginner classes or drills classes, people say, you know, those combinations we're doing in class are kind of fun. It'd be nice to sequence more of those and actually have a finished product. When you learn a combination in a beginner class or a combination in a drills class, you're not expected to remember it when you come back that next week to that class. When you get into a choreography and you're looking at a full piece of music, usually 3 to 6 minutes, somewhere in that range, then you are expected to remember what you did in the previous class. You bring it into the next class and you add on. And then you're expected to remember what you've done in those 2 classes, you bring it into the next class and you add on. And so you string together a sequence of movement across an entire piece of music. So, you know, maybe you've done that and other forms of dance, but that's choreography. That's what we would do here too, depending on where you were at your level of layering and footwork and speed and all that kind of stuff. That would dictate where you would be most comfortable at what level of choreography. So beginner choreographies tend to be more repetitive, a little slower paced. Intermediate choreographies step it up a little bit. Advanced choreographies tend to be faster. They're going to have all the elements of a more advanced drills class. There's going to be some layering, not as much repetition, maybe some really nuanced stuff going on your body to depict the nuanced things going on in the music at a really low level of detail. Beginner choreographies usually stay at a higher level of detail. Just, can you count to 8 and keep these things going over and over? So each one of these would have its own challenges, and so you would just want to know where you were on your technique level and where you would feel successful in the choreographies. And I can help you with that. Teachers can help you with that. Yeah. So that's that for the choreography. Project Band is, hopefully some of y'all are going to be at Go Live this coming weekend, and you'll see some choreographies going on to live music. And what you're going to mostly see, though, are dancers that are in the live music curriculum at Karavan, where they are training to improvise to live music. And live Arabic music is in itself improvised in many cases. So this is really a test of a dancer's fluency and ability to access what they have learned through all of these other things. And so people can come into Project Band. You'll see they can come from drills classes, they can come from choreography classes. And I would say at any level, these are deeper discussions that we can have. The only thing that isn't linked straight to Project Band is beginner classes. So if you've never belly danced in your life, you've done 8 weeks of beginner classes, I do not recommend you go into Project Band. At least come over here and let's develop a little bit more movement vocabulary. I'm not saying you have to be advanced to get into Project Band at all. I never would say that, because it's a whole different skill set. And again, if that's something that you become interested in, we can talk about that. There's a massive section on the website, massive, that talks about Project Band. So I don't want to eat up a whole lot of time with this, but this is basically how things go at Karavan. Now, I'm going to dig into the whole choreography idea just a little bit more. You're going to see a couple of choreographies coming onto the schedule at the end of the year. Several more will come on when we get to 2024. And our school year is based largely on the Project Band milestones. And we call them triple header perform rehearsals. That's just a really complicated thing, but triple header means there's something going on each day of the weekend. So we have our kickoff for Project Band in November. Then we'll have another triple header in January, another one in April, another one in July, and then Go Live for 2024. What we're getting ready to have this coming weekend is scheduled already for 2024. There it is, October 4th through 6th. I bring up this slide because this date right here, July 13th, is where any choreographies that were learned to recorded music, and those are going to be any choreographies that were learned between now and July 13th. Those will all be to recorded music. That's a much safer place than live music. They will have the opportunity to be showcased at Jumpstart Theater on that date. So if you take a choreography that's coming onto the schedule as early as November, or certainly any choreographies coming onto the schedule once we get to 2024, and it's something that you want to perform, then that's your target date, July 13th. So it's a fun way to move through the dance, right? To have some goals that you set for yourself. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. A recorded music choreography at a beginner level, or an intermediate level, that just might be a great way to make you sequence things and remember what you're doing. So many times, and several of y'all have said it, you learn a combination, you walk out the door, and then you're like, what the hell did we do? And by the time you get home, you can't remember what it is. You will remember what it is if you learn a choreography, because there's going to be a lot of repetition of what you're doing in class, and things will start sinking in a little bit better. So that is a benefit to doing choreographies. But any recorded music choreographies, that's the target date to showcase what you've learned, if you want to. Nobody ever has to perform it. It's just a good goal. And then the choreographies that will be taught later in 2024 will be done to recorded music, again, just like it's coming up this next weekend here at the Go Live in October. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. But we run choreographies in two chunks at Karavan right now. Early in the year, those are to recorded music. Later in the year is to live music. And then this is the schedule coming up. Come here, schedule. What's going on? Why? There it is. It's in progress, right? Today is October 1st. That's when I'm talking. You're probably going to get this email on October 2nd. But this week is not terribly different. There's no class on Thursday, but this week is not terribly different from anything that's gone on previously. But then we have our massive go live weekend. Oh, don't do this to me, computer. Try to behave. Try to behave. Okay, I'm gonna get it back. Stick with me. I'm not gonna stop recording and start it again. I am not. I'm gonna entertain you while this all comes back together. So what I'm gonna show you is just that we have a very reduced schedule in the month of October. Necessarily so, before we get our heads around all of the things that are gonna come online when we start out full force, which is really gonna be January. So the month of October looks like this. No classes on that Monday, October the 9th. Please note that. No nothing, because that's going to be after the go live, and I'm literally going to be running to the airport and cleaning up stuff in the studio all day that day. Tuesdays at the Dakota, that's part of the project band thing. So that always goes on, because that just always goes on. And then starting Wednesday the 11th, all the beginner classes are coming back onto the schedule. And this new beginner class that's on Sundays at 6 o'clock is going to come on the schedule. So for 2 weeks here after go live, the only classes on the schedule are beginner classes. So if you're not a beginner, you can still do a beginner class and it wouldn't hurt you a bit. And I think that after a big show like go live, that's a great time to just step back and reset. You've been remembering your choreographies, you've been improvising and repeating movements on your body the way your body wants to do them. This is a good time to step back and go, okay, what the hell am I really doing when I do a hip drop? And can I clean that up a little bit before I go forging forward into all of the action of the next school year? So everyone is encouraged to come to some beginner classes in those 2 weeks. I have to actually go teach a workshop in El Paso the weekend of the 21st and 22nd, but there will be subs in place to run those classes. And then I'm back on the 23rd, and all the drills, not all the drills, but some of the drills will come back onto the schedule. So there's the Monday drills class coming back onto the schedule. That Friday, the Wednesday 12:30 drills class comes back onto the schedule. The Friday 12:30 drills class comes back onto the schedule. And the Saturday drills class will come back onto the schedule. But that first 12:30 Saturday class that comes back onto this schedule post go live is actually going to be a Zills, that's finger cymbals 101 workshop. And that's just a chance to clean up your Zill playing if you're a Zill player already, or to learn a little something about how those guys work and how they can work with your dance experience if you've never done them before. We have lots of loaner finger cymbals at the studio, so I encourage you to check out that little workshop. And then the month is over. So the November schedule is where some of those choreographies and other workshops are going to pop up. The Karavan site has been updated for a long time. If you click on classes and then look at choreographies and workshops, all of this stuff at the end of the year, that Zills 101 workshop and everybody else's workshops and choreographies that are going to be coming up are already on there. If that's something you want to do, if you just want to do beginner classes or drills classes or whatever, we all know how to handle that. So there. Hopefully that sets a little bit of a framework for how things work at Karavan in general and how they're going to work over the course of our next school year. As always, if you have questions, man, just ask me. I love enthusiastic dance students, so fire away. Most of you know that I love to talk about this stuff, so just let me know if you have any questions. All right, cool.